First of all, I'd like to thank Dan for extending me the opportunity to stand and speak where he speaks at on Sunday mornings. It's really very generous on his part. I've been and visited a lot of places where that just doesn't happen. So it speaks a lot to him as a man and individual, as a preacher. I'd like to also thank the church leadership here for having enough faith and confidence in me to extend the opportunity to speak and fill in. I was pretty excited. It's been a while since I've been able to do something like this. But I'd be remiss not to thank all those who have been supportive of me. It made me stop and think and reflect back to all those different individuals, men and women who've been important in my life to help guide me to this point, to at least let me get back to just this opportunity once again. I was thinking this morning about an individual way back in, I can't say way back in my life, when we moved to Michigan. There was a guy named Dr. James Thompson. And a lot of you may not know of him. He has since passed away. But he believed that his mission was to help implant preachers around the brotherhood. And it was to make people preachers who didn't have the opportunity to go off to Bear Valley or Liscum or places like that to become preachers. And when I came to the congregation, I was a new member in the body of Christ. And he says, "Brother Clark, I think you'd be good going to school." I said, I don't want to become a preacher. I just want to become a good Christian. He said, "Well, that'll do good training for you. Just come on and come anyway." I said, "Just understand, I've got no problem in attending." He says, "Well, the church needs good train," and him and the elders and deacons there really believed in training of brothers and men. If you were to go to North Broadway Church of Christ now in Mount Clemens, Michigan, you will see that it works almost like clockwork. The people who are appointed to elders, deacons, even people who are in the non-formal roles we have, for treasurers to different things, there's a constant process at training and getting people in place to move to different positions. So he formalized the school. It became Preachers Training Institute. Eventually it grew some more, and it's still a weekend-only school. Expanded to train people to become elders, deacons, preachers, and people like me who just want to be a good Christian. At that point in time, when it became Midwestern Christian Institute, I was blessed to become the first dean of students. Didn't know what I was doing, but that was my role. I still just want to be a good Christian brother. Still just want to be a good Christian brother. I don't need a title or name or formalized position. So I'm thankful for him looking at me and the brothers for accepting me in that role. And my family, as I grew and worked in those roles, it became very taxing. And I will tell you that people who live in those roles as formalized church leaders, you never really know how much they really go through and how much God, and more so the church, puts expectations on those men and those families in their roles. That people have their own beliefs about, which is above what God believes and God expects from them, that they put upon those men and their families, that it's hard to explain unless you've seen it. And I will tell you, one of the most disheartening and discouraging things that you can have as a person who's behind the scenes in those roles is seeing the underbelly of the church and some of the nasty, dirty things that causes people to step down from those roles and positions because they see the real side of the realness of people of Christianity. And sometimes it becomes very discouraging. I also like to ask forgiveness of the church. For those of you who came expecting a little children's program, I'll tell you that's something that's very unique to Dan. The Lord chose not to give me a voice to sing, because as a young man, I'd have probably used that to the wrong thing. I'd found many opportunities to be somewhere around a group of women and probably been using that voice to do some very destructive types of things. He gave me enough athletic ability at that time to have my fun at that point in time, but as I got older, he took that away from me. So if you come back maybe 2 Sundays from now, next Sunday when there's opportunity for little children's to come forward, we ask that you bring in the kids there. This morning, I'd like to thank David for reading the scripture that will be the topic of the baseline of our message this morning. And I'm not going to reread it for you. I believe it's a story, if you're a Christian, and if you're not a Christian, I believe it's a story that is familiar to most of you already. It's Matthew, the 25th chapter, the 14th through 30th verse. It's a story of the master and the three servants. And from that, I will approach it just a little bit differently as I go through and highlighting some points that you may or may not thought of. But as I get to the story, it's amazing how when you sit down to study and think about one thing, that things just kind of guide you off a little bit different. But I believe that you'll see how it all ties together. You know, there was a gentleman, as I started to prepare for this lesson today, and let me say this also, I'd like to welcome all of you who are visiting here with us today. I'm glad you're humble and really welcome guests. We're so grateful that you chose to be here today and not somewhere else. We're not going to ask you to stand and embarrass you or anything like that, but just know, hopefully one of us or someone will come by and just welcome you here in person, but we're glad to have you here with us this morning. As I was preparing, a gentleman came across in my studies named Carl Vader. Now, he is a California minister, no different than some other ministers you read about, Josh McDowell and some of these other popular people you read about. But it caught my attention because he developed a passion for smaller churches. And he was designing a ministry to help encourage and support smaller church pastors because he saw the discouragement and the destruction and the things that fall apart. And what caught my attention was something that he said, even in his viewpoint, was that in large places and around the world, about 90% of places of worship were about 200 members or less. And I thought about this, and I thought about the places I have visited during my lifetime, Churches of Christ, and I started doing the mental math, and the places I visited, in the different places I've been at, and even the places I've been here, overseas, or whatever. And I thought about, how many Churches of Christ are really over 200 members when I sat in the place of worship on Sundays? And I thought about that. And he also mentions that many people believe, and he was speaking to those who were ministers in this particular case, and I think sometimes this thought applies to members. They think that their ministry or their place of worship has failed because they haven't grown into a mega church. And that's a really sad and false point of view. Very sad and false point of view. I believe, sadly and afraid, that many Churches of Christ have adopted this mentality, that they falsely believe the Church of Christ is a failure because they are not a mega church. Why is that sad? Because the Bible doesn't teach that. And I think if you go back and look in the New Testament and see how the church evolved, there weren't any mega churches. If people were meeting house to house, how could it be 200 people in a person's house? And I'll tell you, if you go back and if you're ever blessed to go to Israel and you see some places and you go to walk around and see these different places, you'll be hard-pressed to get 20 people in a room, let alone 200 or more in these places of worship. Very, very small places when you go to places where the churches of Christ were at, very small places. When we're not doing what other churches are doing or not worried about what other churches are doing, it causes a problem in us when we start looking at other places. When we start saying, look at church ABC. We don't have as many members as church ABC. We don't offer what church EFG offers. We're all too focused on and can get distracted by what's going on around us and what we believe their abilities are. And then all too often we start focusing to that point and to that extent that we start having excuses and making excuses for ourselves about what we aren't doing and what we are having to our church. And it starts to become a painful and a negative downward spiral. So today, I want to help focus and refocus our minds on just one simple topic, and that is to be awesome where you are right now. Not somebody else. I just want you to think about you and yourself being awesome where you're at right now. Now, I'm sure that the story, like I said, I'm sure that the story of the parable of the talents, the master, the one with given 5, the one given 3, the one given 1. The one given 1. I'm sure you're very familiar with that Bible. Let me just highlight some things that you may have overlooked because it's been said so many times. Aspect stories that you may have skipped past as you read it or heard it. These are all bags of gold, right? I don't know what the value of gold was back during the time of the story. I didn't look in the Wall Street Online or Barron or listen to the financial radio news like I do a lot of times. Tell you what the value of gold is now, but I tell you it had some value. Now the man with 5 bags of gold was interesting. He took his money. He somehow invested it. He got double. The man with 2 bags of gold, he took his money that was given to him by the master. He invested it and got double. The man who had 1 bag didn't invest. So what's interesting, the Bible doesn't speak to how they invested those bags of gold. We don't know if they invited in crypto. We don't know if they invited in annuities. We don't even know if they invited in index stock funds. Did he invest it in something illegal? We do know the money doubled, but let me answer the question, was it invested in something illegally? And we can answer that question from the third servant's response. He says to the master, I know you are a hard man. Now the word hard translates from the Greek word as originally means, which is skeleto. Skeleto comes from the original word meaning dried and parched up. The emphasis is put mostly on the negative side, with the emphasis being dead. Now, as the word evolves into the Latin is associated with profane, polluted, and wicked. So I believe, through necessary inference, that they wouldn't invest in something illegal because he knew how hard and harsh his master that came down on him for doing something wrong with that money. What he didn't count upon was that doing nothing with that money would get him cast out also. So what does it mean to us today? What does this mean to us today? Did the good Lord come down and give you 5 bags of money? Did the master come down and give you 2 bags of money? Did the master come down and give you 1 bag of money? Did he give you anything to invest in terms of bags of money? In today's time, the bags of money translates into your talents and abilities to invest in the church or the membership. You know, and that is to help it grow, to help it develop, and to be a better place than what it is today. So we need to stop focusing in on what we are and are not what we have and what we don't have, and be about doing what God expects us to do. We need to focus on being awesome where we're at right now and not look around. Just like he didn't tell the servants how to invest, where to invest, the servant's mindset needs to be, I need to invest my talents and abilities into something, giving back to God what God has given me. I know what God has given me. You know what God has given you. We need to give that back to God to help build his kingdom, to help build his membership, to help build that church that God has all given us a chance to be opportunity to be a part of. I can't tell you what God has given you. You can't tell me what God has given me. But I can tell you, if we don't do nothing, we can easily be cast down, cast away. We're all expected to do something what God has given us. And it's not the same for everybody. We're expected to invest. And here's what's interesting. We aren't given, God forbid, if we were given the expectation that we had to double on what God has given us to invest. That's not the expectation, to double on that. Because, God forbid, if an angelic being came down and did a spot audit on the ledger and came and knocked on your doorstep today and says, you know, I've come to audit and assess what you have done with what I have given you, how would you answer? How would you answer for this week? How would you answer for last week? How would you answer for the past month? How would you answer for the past year? What have you done? Show me the return. I'm not asking for double. I just want to see the return on the investment, what God has given you to work with. What would you say? What would the record show? This is just an assessment. Just an assessment of what you've done, what God has given you. Well, you won't be able to say, well, you know, I really haven't done what I should because, you know, my friend, he went over there to that other place. So I decided I was going to go over there to that other place and just join him. So that's the reason why, you know, my investment's kind of been interrupted because I'm kind of in transition. All the excuses we may use or may not use for why we didn't do what we are supposed to do with what we had, I don't think they're going to fly. Let me share with you a real-life example that happened to me, and I think it's applicable as far as us making excuses about why we aren't supposed to do, why we don't do what we're supposed to do. A lot of you may or may not know that I actually travel and fly a lot for my job on a weekly basis, pretty much so. So on this particular Monday morning, I go to the Omaha airport. I go to check in my bag. I look for my identification, didn't see it right away. But guess what? I have Premier status. So I go to Premier line. I pull out a piece of identification. The lady looks at me, Mr. Clark, here's your tag, verify it. She looks at me a little strange. Identification. Have a good flight. I get up to the gate. Now, if you haven't been to TSA desk lately, you're supposed to have special ID. My ID I use is my driver's license. And on this particular day, I go to pull out my wallet. I look for my driver's license. Couldn't find my driver's license. And the lady says, you know, I recognize you. You're here quite often. What's you say your name is? Oh, you're on our list as a frequent traveler. You know, I do know you, but I can't let you in. She says, you know, do you have a prescription with your name on it? I says, no, ma'am, that is actually my luggage. Well, do you have a utility bill that has your name on it? I said, no, I pay my bills online. So then the reality hit me in the head. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to miss my flight. What I'm going to say to the people on the other end about why I'm not going to make it today or might not make it any day because I can't find my license. How do I explain, how dumb it was to me to get to this place and I don't have any identification to get on the plane? I can't just say, call downstairs to the person on the desk of American Airlines. They let me in, so you should let me in. Nope, we got no affiliation with American Airlines. Why don't you just wait here, and we're going to see what my supervisor has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I had gate issues. I had a gate problem. I wasn't going to cross that gate until I had the proper identification. Didn't have a passport on me. I have a passport. Didn't have it on me. So I sat there and prayed and said, Lord, help me out. I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to solve this situation. Well, fortunately, as I went through and pulled everything out of my wallet in and out for about the fifth or sixth time, I looked up and there was my driver's license. My driver's license somehow had got wedged down in between my credit cards. I don't know why it was there. I pulled it out. I showed the lady, says, oh, yep, works. Go on and make your flight. So if the TSA, a federal organization, was going to keep me from crossing over through that gate that I had bought a ticket for, that's authorized and approved for me to go and catch my flight, and I had all these excuses and reasons of why I should go and catch that flight, what do you think is going to happen to us as a Christian if we stand at the gate and start trying to make excuses? You think there's going to be some people who might have some gate problems? You think there might be a few people who might have some gate problems? Well, my family went over here. Well, I couldn't make it. Well, I wasn't feeling like it. Well, my sick. Well, how many people with excuses are going to be able to stand at the gate and be denied? And how many people be let in? Because they didn't resolve when they had the opportunity and chance to resolve the issues that caused it, that would stop them, prevent them from having gate problems. You see, if the TSA is that tight, can you imagine what's going to happen at the gate of heaven when God has his angel standing right there and somebody says pass or go? If you've ever crossed the border, I can remember this distinctly, and mine has been updated and changed. When I would cross the border of Mexico, there's a buzzer, and there's a red light and green light. Press the button, red light, I wasn't going nowhere. I qualified for the United States, but guess what? This is Mexico. I got a passport. I even got a worker ID I got from your Mexican embassy. I went down in person that says I'm allowed to come and work here. No, senor. Sit right here. And they had to wait until I was qualified to go through with took me through all the right identifications, all the right means to get there. So as a Christian, I appeal to you. Make sure you're doing all the right things and don't have any excuses that's going to cause you to have gate problems or gate issues on this side of life. My second point is, do all those things that you can to not worry about what other churches and other people are doing. Don't sit there and say, well, we don't offer other things that those other churches and other places are offering. That's the reason I'm going over here. well, you know, they got this over there and they got this over here and programs, they got services, they serve breakfast, they serve lunch. They got a Starbucks coffee machine in the foyer, which is true. I actually went to a church in Fort Worth. They had a Starbucks coffee machine in the foyer. They had an ATM. If you wanted to pull out your money, it's a Church of Christ. If you want to take your money out for it, they had a all Spanish service. They had a all a cappella service. They had an instrumental service. They had one that had dramatic interpretation where they, and I sat through that one where they had the people with the fire and swinging from the trapeze and everything like that going on in the service. They had, if you wanted one, they had one to fit you. That made me scared because I wondered if I have gait problems, if the Lord came back and I was sitting in that worship. So I didn't go back. I chose not to go back to that worship that church anymore. And it was a mega church. It was a mega church, but I decided, well, I don't want to have any gait issues. The Lord called. For some reason, the Lord calls me home, and I'm sitting up in here, and he says, you know, you should have known better. So part of what this Mr. Vader, as I mentioned earlier, is known famously for is something called the grasshopper mindset. And that comes from Numbers 22, 32, and 33. And this goes back to when they're first crossing over to Canaan land. And they're getting reports back from the spies about, you know, we sing the song, to Canaan land, I'm on my way. This is Moses and all those people, hey, we're on our way to the, you know, think about where the soul never dies. Well, guess what? They had to go take those places from people living in them already. And the spies came back, 12 spies came back seeing, and it says, oh, there's so many and so big of people. We feel like we're grasshoppers in our own mind. In our own mind. Nobody told them they were grasshoppers. They felt like they're grasshoppers in their own mind. They psyched their own selves out. And it said, look at them in their own mind, and look at us. Do you know there is a very close relationship between grasshoppers and locusts? And I didn't realize that till I start looking at his lessons. And I read something that was very interesting. I didn't have a chance to study more about it. But the difference between a grasshopper and locust is that when a grasshopper starts to rub together with other grasshoppers, it can evolve into a locust just by rubbing itself with another locust. Now, you guys know the much damage that locusts can do to crops, to damage different things. It can wipe out crops. It's happened here in the United States. What's interesting is that the swarms of locusts and different things originate in Africa and other places, and somehow they're able to travel across the ocean and other places to arrive here. So if you have those false beliefs about, oh, I'm just a grasshopper. Oh, things, we can't do this here. We can't have that there. We're too small. We don't have that program here. We don't have that over there. And you put that in your own mind. God didn't put it there. Be the best of what you are where you're at. Stop deceiving yourself. You know, Christianity was introduced to the world by 12 people. Why do we feel we need to be so big? Why do we have to be so structured? Why do we think we need to have so many programs and so many formalized things? We need to be on the radio and TV and so on and so forth. You know what's interesting, and I made reference earlier to the congregation that we came from. Our congregation had a radio ministry. And it's basically the preacher did his sermon, and the sermon came on AM radio, and he came on AM radio for years. And he also did a recording for, it was some ministry where he would send off his tapes, and it was broadcast Africa, so he was in Africa, and in his mind, he felt like he was preaching around the world to other places, where other people felt like, well, we need to be on the radio. Well, guess what? Their financial constraints of their congregations did support them being on the radio. Some people said, we're going to be on TV. Financially, they weren't in a position to be on TV, let alone radio. So be the best of what you are or what you can be, where you're at right now. Quit trying to be what you aren't, and think about where you are. You know, there's another story I like to recall, and this is a story of Gideon that you can find in Judges 7. And it's Gideon and the Mennonites. And if you go back and also look in Judges 7, and I'm going to change this, use some, put a more contemporary illustration to it, so maybe you can absorb it a little bit different. But Gideon was told that this land you're going to take from the Midianites, and he was going up against about, I think it's somewhere upwards of 120,000 Midianite men who he was going to fight against to take the land from. But you know what? That didn't matter to Gideon, because he had 32,000 six-star recruits. Why do I call them six-star recruits? Because they weren't just 5 stars. These are 6 stars. These are all men who have been battle-hardened before. So you just put them out in the field. They didn't have to be coached up much, trained up more. They had been battle-fought, and you just put them on the field. They knew what to do already. So he was pretty confident. We're going to go down there, and we can do some damage. So he had some confidence. But God looked over the team. He looked over the roster and says, you know what, Gideon, there's too many people on the roster. Too many people on the team. So he says, you know what, if I let you go down there with that many people to take on the Midianites, your men are going to think about, we did this ourselves. Because we're just that strong, we're just that confident, we're 6-star recruits. We could take, for every one of them, every 10 or 100 of them, we can do one of us. So that's the reason why I'm going to reduce this roster down. So he says, there's too many people, and you're going to say, my own hands saved me and delivered the Midianites to me. So he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make an announcement. To everyone that's fearful, depart and leave right now. So those people left and went to Gideon right then and there. 22,000 people left immediately. 6-star recruits. Are you fearful? Well, think I am. Leave right now. Whack. 22,000 off the top. So with those 22,000 off the top, he said, you know what? I still think there's few too many you have on the team. Few too many think that we delivered and made this happen ourselves. So I want you to take these men down to the water, and those who get on their hands and lap it up like a dog, I want you to have those go away also. And those who on their knees and drink the water with their hands, those that I want you to keep. That came down to a number of 300. Now I have 300 six-star recruits who are going to take on the Midianites in their encampment with 120,000 plus men. They're going to take over this area that God had promised them. So you think it changes perspective about who's going to help them win the battle? You think they're going to think about, oh, we did it? No, I think that you kind of insert the equation that God is going to help me do this. So Gideon instructed the men to, here's what I'm going to give you. I'm not going to give you a sword. Not going to give you a shield. I want you to take a torch, take a pitcher, and take a trumpet. You're going to space yourselves out three different, I can't remember the technical term, three different, can't remember the military term, but three different groups of men, but you'll spread yourselves out over the top of this ridge, equally spaced basically. And you're going to blow your trumpet upon my signal, and with this, and you're going to break the vase, and just wait and see what happens. Now, I can imagine you're in the camp, and if you've ever been above a ravine, when you can imagine just hearing that sound of broken vase after broken vase, and you think about the echoes, they didn't have shotguns back during that time, but they had catapults and other things, and you could hear the sound if a catapult or something was being tossed towards you, that sound would strike fear in your heart before that big rock or that big boulder was coming towards your area. And you saw that fire in that vase, that little bit of fire that's up there on that ridge, it struck fear of them. You know what happened? Those men in that camp, they got paranoid and scared, and they killed themselves. So basically, the 300 came in, cleaned it out, and the land and the victory belonged to God. So it just shows the power of, if you be the best of what you are or what you can be, where you're at, God can do miracles. Stop worrying about other people. Stop talking about other people. I need to be somewhere else. I need to be doing this. I need what this person's doing. Look what they're doing over here. Look what they're not doing. You know what? We don't do this. That used to fascinate me at another church. People walk up to me and would tell me, you know what you need to do, what you need to have. And I kind of in the middle know those people walk up to me and say that, because I would think about, what's this person, not make a middle note, what's this person active in doing in the church? I can hang a zero. What's this person actually do besides just spitting out words and just giving a suggestion and walking away? Hang another zero. And what I wanted to say back is that, my brother, my sister, what you need to do or what you need to have is make an active role participation for you to do something to help change the direction of this church or this congregation or this membership of where you see the needs at. We don't just need your words. Love to have your prayers, but more so to have your godly actions to help improve the situation here. But no, those people weren't those types of people. They would just bark out something and leave. Those are people that if they didn't come see you, they hit the door right after worship right away. You got those people that couldn't wait for the church service to end till you all see them. They don't stop to talk to nobody. That when the service ends, it's like a speed race to go get to the car. I'm just saying that those are the people who I experienced over there. I can't say that happens here, so I'll just leave that alone. So my last point is, I've talked about those. So when is it actually we got this individual with the one talent, and I brought up about different things. So it begs to answer the question, what are some good reasons? Well, Brother Clark, there's got to be some reasons on why I should leave. There's got to be some reasons on, I just, you frustrate me. I just can't take it here no more. So let me give you some reasons why, or some bad reasons why you shouldn't leave. You start saying, well, the church is too big or too small. If you are part of the body, you still are needed. When you leave and you're part of the body here and go somewhere else, who have you really hurt? You've hurt the body here. You've hurt the body here. But you know what? That's not on me. That's on you. You say, well, I'm not being fed anymore over here. I'm just not being fed. I need to be fed where I'm at. Well, I get it. We can't always feed ourselves. There's younger Christians who need to be fed. But as mature Christians, there might be a few here, maybe there aren't. I could talk about where I was at before. There'd be some people talk about, well, I'm not getting fed. Well, as mature Christians, you need to invest the time and effort to utilize what you are hearing and use your own utensils after what you heard to go chew it up, blend it up, sit down and break it up, then bring it back to the person you heard it from, discuss it up, see if you can learn more about what's being said. It's up to you to process your own food as a mature Christian. And if you think it's being processed wrong, that's where the maturity comes from, because a little baby has to have the food processed for him. As a mature Christian, you come to a point where you need to develop the skills to start processing some things on your own. Well, sometimes you might say, well, I haven't found the right place to serve. Haven't found the right place to serve. Well, sometimes I've struggled with that, many times in my background. But you know what? You keep on working with the leadership and pray God will find a place for you to fit in. Or you know what? This is another common reason. Somebody hurt my feelings. Hurt your feelings. Hurt your feelings. Well, reconciliation is a Christian process, Christian principle. We need to somehow grow a thicker skin and keep on moving forward. Because God reconciled us back to him. Somehow we got to find a way to reconcile ourselves back to each other. Well, brother, the church is changing. The church is changing, huh? The church is changing. Society is changing. Don't you change with society? The price of gas is changing. I can remember when the price of gas was $1. That's me. That's how old I am. Price of gas. Some of you remember the price of gas is a lot less. Guess what? I had to do some changing if I still wanted to drive. So if you made adjustments in your life outside of church, maybe you need to look at making some adjustments in your life inside of church. Well, I'm hindered by a health condition. I'm physically limited about what I can do and what I can't do. Well, you still need to make an effort to somehow actively participate, because guess what? People are inspired, believe it or not, by your faithful commitment. It means something to somebody to see that, regardless of what's going on in their life, they're still faithfully committed. That's the inspirational people that you may not even know they're watching you. Lastly, you give up on the church entirely. You gave up on the church. You elected to pull away from God, but God hasn't separated himself from you. So what situation have you decided to put yourself in? So I've said enough for now. I may have ran a little bit longer than I planned. But if you can apply nothing else from this lesson today, just learn how to be awesome where you're at right now. So one of the things that, as I was preparing this lesson, as I was going through this lesson, it convicted me a lot. I had to repent several times as I was preparing this lesson because, you know what, I could think about several different times that I hadn't been awesome where I was at right now. And maybe that applies to you as a Christian. Maybe you need to find the time to repent. But guess what? If you're a person who hasn't put on the Lord in baptism, you just need to hear, believe, confess Christ. We have water ready to baptize you into Christ, that you can become a member of the body of Christ, and you can be even more awesome than what you are right now, where you're at, by becoming a member of the body of Christ. I'd like to thank you for your time as we stand and sing the song of invitation.